Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Why We Heal, the show where we are breaking down all things healing and making it relatable for you and your everyday life. Today, I'm very excited to welcome a very special lady, Wendy Jones, who is the host of the What I Meant to Say podcast and the founder of Be Better Media. And today, Wendy and I will dish on all things high performance, what you need to heal to be really exceptional in your life. And so let's welcome Wendy. And hi, Wendy.
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much.
I'm so good.
Me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait to get into this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my jam. So what a topic. I love your podcast concept. I'm so excited to dig in.
Thank you. So now Wendy and I mean, if you guys care at all, Wendy and I met through a mutual friend of ours, Sean Liddick, who is also a high-performing athlete and just high-performing in life. And we met up in California and sat down and had a light dinner and just really hit it off. Felt like, we'd found soul sisters. And so, discovered new things. And so it's really nice to have her here to join us and to share some of her magic and her soft beauty and her gentle heart with you all. So I have to also say, I didn't warn you about the intro question that I ask everyone.
Awesome.
So
can't wait to find out.
It's going to be a cold one for you.
I love it.
I'm sure you can handle it. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. The first question is, what, in your perspective, is healing?
Oh man, healing is so continual. It is a lifelong evolution of the things we encounter and how we respond to them. And it's really a gift, and it's a gift we give ourselves, and then it just trickles out into the world and helps other people. So it's both a responsibility and a privilege.
I like that. I like that. I like that. It's continual, it's a privilege, and it's a responsibility. Okay, I'm sure we're going to come back to all of that. So, do you have, okay, I also didn't tell you about this, but now I'm thinking about it. You're also an athlete and you've raised athletes. You are raising athletes and you've worked with, you've been in this, I mean, this is your life. So for yourself, even, is there some type of healing that you had to go through or that you went through that was really significant and helped, shape your perspective now?
Well, I've had probably two real catalysts in the things that started to change my perspective in my adult life. One was going through a divorce about 6 years ago. I have 4 kids. They're now 22 to 15. And that was a real, ground shaking moment, both for me and for my kids. And I had to figure out, I just remember sitting there saying, like, how did this happen? And wanting to figure out how I got to that point. And, there's just a lot of questions you ask yourself and you look back at your story. And when I started to do that, and I did a lot of journaling, and then I published my blog, and I just did a lot of uncovering. So that was one big moment that really began my journey on just self-reflection and figuring out how I got there. The other one, having 4 kids, parenting was like the first thing I ever knew I was really good at. And that sounds like a less than humble statement now, but I had my first at 25, and it was just the first thing that just felt totally natural to me. So it's just been such a gift to have all 4 of them, because they're all so different. And you realize, like, you really have to be self-aware to understand that there are values and principles that you want to teach them, but each one of them is so different that you have to find that nuance and that trust your intuition of how to navigate that road. And we've been through a ton together. And the thing I've realized is everyone gets so excited about parenting, and I've had amazing moments with my kids where they're the MVP or they get straight A's or they have all of these high moments. But the real gift is working with them and being with them through the challenges that they encounter. And we've been through that. And I figured out, even in particular in the last year, that that's where the real gold is. And if you can teach them that the hard things and how they respond to them is how their lives will, flourish. It's it's amazing. Like, you think the hardest moments are the things you're so scared of, and then you hit them and you're like, wow, this is where it's at. So, and then the high moments get to be the high moments and you enjoy them. But
Mhm.
I don't know, it's given me a completely different perspective on how to handle stress, how to handle, just reframe challenge in a different way, which I think is really important if you want to hit that level of high performance in whatever field you're in.
Right. I love that because I feel like what you're talking about is relationship in general. The high moments are always the high moments, but how do you handle difficult ones? And so often, I think it's consistent that people just basically don't have coping skills. So I feel like you're saying you're teaching your children coping mechanisms to deal with like the real things about life. And so many people grow up without those coping mechanisms. So that's when you turn to substances, you turn to, numbing yourself or all the types of behaviors that basically work against whatever you really want in your life or for yourself, just because you don't know how to cope.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely, when I went through that divorce, I started looking for things that really grabbed my interest. And a lot of them, before I even had mentors in this arena of healing, I found them through podcasts. And
Mm,
one of my favorites is Finding Mastery, is Michael Gervais. He's a sports psychologist, and he brings on people from all different walks of life that have, been to the highest levels of their craft. And you started to notice the underpinnings of how they got there. And it led me to go to a seminar up in Seattle that he was teaching, Compete to Create. And there was an Olympian, Nicole Davis, she's an amazing volleyball player, works with Dr. Mike, and we were sitting at a table and we were talking about things that are important to us. And she looked at me and she said, when you say human connection, your whole face lights up. And nobody
mm,
had ever said that to me before. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And then I traced that back to, and I'm sure you've heard this, connection is the opposite of addiction. Connection
mm.
is I've seen it now in ads. It was the first time I had heard it at that
I've
point.
never heard this, so I'm
Yeah, no,
interested.
this is fascinating to me. I've heard it now through a lot of recovery workshop type of things. But connection, people are seeking connection. They want
Yeah,
to feel understood. They want to know they
yeah,
belong. And when they don't, that's when we start seeking out these substances that numb us, whether it's,
hmm,
drugs, alcohol, sex, food, whatever it is.
hmm.
And then when you realize that you can solve that with human connection, I mean, that just lights
Hmm.
me up, because that's what
But
we need.
do you find sometimes that it creates like codependency though? Because then
Yeah,
you can become dependent on the
yeah,
human connection. You can become dependent on a person, and
true.
then that also can become an addiction.
Yes, absolutely. Codependency is something that I look for. I know I am a recovering codependent from,
Hmm.
years. There's, alcoholism. If you go back 3 or 4 generations in your family, everybody has something. Families are chock full of challenges, right?
Yeah.
And I realized through my marriage that I fit that bill. I was a codependent. And
Mhm.
now, so I did a whole bunch of, learning about what that really means. And yeah, there are things to do, because I think, falling in the middle, or I always find that the answer is somewhere in the middle, right? And so
Definitely. Yes.
don't want to be a codependent. I also don't want to be hyper independent. And I think we
Right.
swing between those two things if we've been in that space where once I was kind of out on my own and raising my kids and having my own thoughts and my own confidence to live the way I wanted to live, I was grateful for all the gifts that I discovered about myself. But then you do start to find like, oh, I'm hanging on to finding that way to connect in a healthy way has so much to do with becoming healthy yourself first.
Yes.
And not
Yes.
that we're ever going to be perfect. And I don't think there's ever fully healed, so that you have to wait to be in a relationship. And I don't even mean just a romantic relationship, but friendships. It'll happen in the workplace.
Yes.
It's
I
all
agree. Yeah.
connected. So yeah, that journey to being able to be by yourself, know yourself, and then connect with the right people. But, life can be lonely. We just came through the holidays and you see
Yeah.
it a lot. There's a lot of sadness, things can come up, and finding the right people to connect with really is how we combat that world of addiction that causes so many
Yeah.
problems in relationships. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So it seems a key and a theme in that even is that you have to be doing some type of self-healing so
Yeah.
that you, even not you, but anyone can release the patterns and the subconscious things
Yeah.
that lead them to these unhealthy attachments. And it reminds me of the saying, like, we should have no attachments, right? Which, of course means we shouldn't be so attached to anything that it basically puts us in a prison or a box.
Yeah.
Because relationships, I mean, there's also healthy attachments, like you're saying, if it's a sustainable relationship, or if, you're both growing through it and that, it's eternal, maybe, So
Yeah.
then I'm wondering how can we lead people to that point of being able to heal within themselves so that they can have these healthier relationships.
One thing
And I
I've
guess it's a healthy relationship with themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, one thing I've learned about knowing yourself is, you hear a lot about, like, in the community that we're in, you hear mind, body, and spirit, and the
Yep.
connectivity between those things. And
Hmm.
one thing I've really learned for me that's been huge is really getting to know my nervous system and understanding
Yes.
where I perform the best. And I had no idea that most of my life, until I was 40 years old, I was really living in a very heightened, sympathetic fight or flight state. And when I came
Yeah,
down
same.
from that, I was like, holy cow, this is how I'm supposed to feel. This is how I can, like, find my energy and my power and connect with other people. And I don't think that gets taught enough. I didn't learn about my nervous system
Mhm.
until I had my kids, and my fourth is on the autism spectrum and very high performing, like, such an amazing kid. And he works really hard, but understanding his nervous system helped me, and the things that I could do to help bring him down so that he could feel his best in his day taught me so much about my own nervous system. And then I was like, wow, this stuff that
Mhm.
works for him is the same stuff that works for me, whether it's breath work, red light,
Yeah.
energy work, just learning how to work with our own nervous system. And that's another shift adapt. These Emily Hightower, amazing mentor for me, just learning how to widen that window of tolerance in your nervous system so that you
Mm.
can perform better, and you just have this bigger space where, as things come in, your body goes, it's okay, I can handle this. And so
Mhm.
much of that is just learning to stay present, because, like they say, what is it? Depression is in the past, anxiety is in the future, and joy is found in the present moment.
Mhm.
And that just, once I figured that out, I was like, wow, it just brings me back every time. Like, you start to worry about something that's going to happen with your child or yourself, or what am I going to do when I'm 70 if this business plan doesn't work, or all of these things that I
Or
can
just
get
too much
myself.
stimulation coming
Yeah.
in, anything.
Oh, huge. And that was huge for my son, but that's been huge for me my whole life. I have very sensitive
Mhm.
ears. I'm an introvert. Yeah, sure, I'd love to go to a concert, but if I do that, I know, I'm like, okay, you got to go back and get your quiet time. Knowing yourself like
That was
that.
me Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. See, and I mean, I love music and I love people, but you got to know yourself, and you got to be able to know
Yeah.
how you recharge and how you recover from everything the world's going to bring at you. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that nervous system,
Okay.
understanding my nervous system has been just a game changer. So, yeah.
Okay, so as always happens, themes emerge. And
Mhm.
so far, what's coming up is knowing yourself. You have to be self-aware, and that we need space. And what I really liked about that is like what I got from what you were saying is we need space so that when some stimulation happens or a trigger, or you can notice your nervous system reacting, you can pivot. And I
Yeah.
had to use a sports analogy appropriately, even though we're not exactly talking about sports, but it's the same concept, right? Because when you're playing, also as an, former athlete, I mean, I still am pretty athletic, but you need that space inside, like you go into the zone and then you can pivot on a dime, no
Yep.
matter what happens. And life should also be like that, but we're so full. Our nervous systems are so taxed. We have
Yep.
so much stimulation. So then we can't pivot, and we don't know what's happening, and we're getting beat up and battered all the time. And then you go into the fight or the flight and you
Yep.
shut down, you know, you
Yeah.
get sick, you're stressed, all the chemicals are firing off, you can't function, you have no idea what's going on inside of you, much less outside of you. And then you become a robot.
Yeah. And you're
You just
just
start
reacting.
going through your motions, you're
Yeah.
reacting to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then other people get a hold of you and you start saying yes to too many things. And for me,
That's right.
it was being a people pleaser and always wanting to make everybody
Mm,
around me happy and thinking that was what I
mm,
was good at. And, I love motivating other people. I see what other people are good at and I want to help them be better at what they're already
mm,
gifted in. And
mm.
but you have to put up those boundaries because that's part of that coming back to yourself, taking the time for yourself to really understand the world around you. And if you don't know how to put up those, proper boundaries, people really do start pulling on you. And then you'll get to that
That's right.
frazzled state. And it does
That's
work
right.
the same. Part of what I love about sports, so much of what I've learned, in my early life to my adult life is the sports that I played that convert into the game of life, right? So many things that we learn. I mean, most of us aren't going on to be professional athletes, but we all, so many of us grew up playing sports that we loved. And yes, we loved it competing and winning and, the friends we made, but the things, those values that we learned about, how to show up, how to be responsible and be coachable, get along with other people, be disciplined, really, set goals. All of those things carry over into our lives. And I think that,
Hmm.
for the athletes that I've raised, I'm like, gosh, if you can just have something you're passionate about that teaches you those things, it takes the pressure and the stress off of having to win or having to be the best, but rather just using that as a growth tool. And
Yeah.
we can do that with anything we're passionate about. My third born left sports and she's a theater kid. But man, when I see her get up on that stage, I'm like, wow, there's a
That's a
lot.
sport.
It is. I'm so impressed. And I'm like, man, the
Yeah,
memorization, the work that goes into like producing that
that's
show,
right.
it is
That's right.
incredible. It's giving me chills right now. I'm like, my gosh, she spends more time in that than I feel like even my athletes, for sure my high school athletes. Now my college is different, but man, there's so much work that goes into that,
It's
but
grueling.
passion about it,
That's right.
it teaches you all these other lessons. And then you just get to carry
That's
them
right.
out in life. So yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the passion, because sports is very physical, and it requires a lot of physical awareness and physical training. And it can be very easy to forget the subtle energy of the being. And I
Mhm.
thought about this when you were saying like the body, mind, spirit, and even the nervous system, because the key to where these all come together is through the soul.
Mm.
And you're really getting to know your soul and having a great relationship with your soul is really key to everything. Because again, otherwise you're kind of like an automaton. And I remember back in the day, I was going through something really, I couldn't decide something. And what someone said to me is, your first responsibility in life is to your soul,
Oh,
the journey of your soul. What do you need to do for yourself, for your soul? And I never forgot that. It's not about what anybody else thinks I should do, what anybody else wants me to do, because you're born with your soul and you're going to leave with it. And ultimately, that mission, that purpose is what really matters.
Yeah.
So I love being able to talk to you about this because, you've got such a
Yeah.
well-rounded perspective on all of the.
I love that because I think there's so much, and I think particularly for the next generation, for the millennials and the Gen Zs out there, there's so much information. There's so many people telling you how to do it, what you should do. Here's my best advice. And podcast world's full of it too. And I love wisdom.
TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. And what little tiny sound bites that are really hard to attach to life's bigger story. Right. I mean, I'm sorry, you're just not going to get the deep wisdom scrolling through your phone. Like, it's not going to.
And they're not trying to give you deep wisdom. They're trying to give you a sound bite that will bring you in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the dopamine hit is real, right? And that's what they're living on. And we all are. But the kids who have never known a world that was different than that, and when all of this information is coming in all the time, and self-awareness, if it starts to slip away, and that journey to self-awareness, and we don't know how to be with ourselves or trust our own gut, our own instinct. And even that gets back to the nervous system, is like your gut. I mean, there's a bunch of science around how our gut is truly, like, how we treat our body informs our gut instinct, informs our intuition. And if we don't know how to listen to that, man, we're just taking in everybody else's opinion. We're calling 10 different people when we've got a problem. Like, sometimes you just need to sit with yourself and be able to listen. And it's really hard to do these days. I think it's always
and then
been
accept
hard.
what you hear.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And like, one of the things, I haven't said this yet, but my North Star is really generational learning and generational healing.
I was just going to bring this up. That was my next thing.
Awesome. Well, you kind of led me there with that question, because I always think like, okay, what do I want to learn? But then I'm always thinking about how it relates to the next generation, because the thing is it doesn't just go one way. I don't think like, oh, I'm here to teach them something. Like, they teach me stuff all the time. And so I love that when we heal, we're also helping them heal. And when you look at families and the way that the choices we make and the things we choose to look at or not look at, whether we're sweeping things under the rug or whether we're raising families that know how to talk about the hard things and become closer because of that, you got to create that safe space, and conversations like this, modeling that stuff and letting, it really normalizes our ability, which I don't think in past generations, it was much more of a buckle down and like, do the hard thing, but don't talk about it. Whereas now I think we're evolving to a place where we can acknowledge the hard stuff. It's not always hard stuff. There's fun stuff too, but to be able to acknowledge it and have an open conversation about it, I think that is one of the greatest things that could happen in our world. And so if I can do that with my own kids and then bring these conversations to the public, like through podcasts, through, media stories, that's my goal. Like, I just want the world to be able to talk about things in a non-judgmental way, where we see the things that affect us. But we know that we're all so much more alike than we are different,
Yes. That's a huge goal of this whole program, is to show how much alike we are, and to show that it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to be everything, because that's what it means to be human. That's the whole point. That's part of your soul's journey, is to experience every aspect of being human. And so, like, I love the generational topic, generational healing, because it's even everything we carry in our DNA. Like, DNA is everything.
Yep.
And it's not just all the scientific stuff. You've got our spiritual DNA, the complete computer program for your entire existence comes through your DNA, and it came through your family, your generational history, all the way back, way before those grandparents and everybody else that you think you knew. We're carrying so much in our DNA.
Yeah.
And so, that is really what I think is a missing piece. It's not just your parents and their problems. or your grandparents, whether they were mean or how they treated your parents. It's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I think it's the Native Americans that say we go back seven generations of like
Yeah.
those patterns and stories, and it probably goes back farther than that. But I love when I heard that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And it's not about
Mhm.
like, it's not a blame game, right? I mean, I always say that
No, absolutely not.
everybody's doing the best they can with what they know. And I kind of like to
Yep.
take that as a, just as a kind of common understanding when I walk into this stuff, because I never want to like, in my life, I look around and I'm like, gosh, people really were doing the best with what they know. But
Yeah,
it's also a responsibility to keep learning. And
that's
that,
right.
when we keep learning, it can sometimes cause those moments where we'll be like, you can see where you know, messed up, but you didn't really mess up if you learn and pivot and change,
And parents, right.
grow from those things. But if you never look at them and you just are
Yes.
convinced you're right, or it's too painful
Yeah.
to look at and you can't handle it,
Yeah.
that's when the patterns keep, the I hate saying bad, but I mean, addiction, those types of
I mean, they're
things,
not great.
no, they're not, and they cause a lot of pain. So if we can do things
Yeah.
to minimize that disconnection between people, and it always comes back to knowing ourselves. And that's another one of my quotes, is the
Yeah.
greatest gifts we can give ourselves, the greatest gift we can give to the next generation is our own self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that again, it goes back to the awareness of your divinity, like the awareness of your spirit and the awareness of your soul. I know in my work, like the first thing I do with anyone is, I think I told you about this, it's life activation, which is
Uh-huh.
a DNA activation. So it brings light into your DNA so that you can start to release all these generational things, so that you can like wake up inside of yourself and start stepping into who you really are. And that like sets the stage for the rest of your life, whether I see you again for another session or not,
Wow.
because what are we if we're still awake, if we're still sleeping?
Yeah.
It's e- even, what you're saying, I'm listening to and I love it. I'm just thinking how it's really hard for people to do that
It is.
because there's no coping mechanism, because you're like, okay, if I start looking at all this stuff, then what do I do with it?
Mm-hmm.
My partner can't help me with it because they have the expectation of me to be something, like I don't have space to break down because I have to go to work. I don't have space to deal with this because I have children. I don't have space to deal with this because I have all these bills that I've created in my life because I needed all these things.
Yeah.
So
All
it's
of
really
that.
important for us to have these conversations so people know that yes, you can look at it, because then once you look at it, there's a place for you to put it.
Yeah.
There's a way for you to move on from it, not just bring it up and then have to walk around with it smeared all over your face.
Yeah.
It's really, really important.
Yeah. You have to give it air. Like if you notice anything, what I've noticed, the things that I've been the most scared of, they're more scary when they're in the dark. The second they
Yeah.
have the courage to bring it out and talk to somebody, and I'm not saying you don't just go talk to anybody, like you find your trusted people, right?
Yeah.
But when you bring it out into the light, whether it's with a close friend or a family member or a therapist, the weight that lifts and the light it is shining on the thing that you're scared of or that's causing you trouble, and it looks different. It looks different than when
Yeah.
it's locked inside of you, or maybe you don't even know how to identify it. And that's when you do need to go talk to a therapist. I mean, the first time I went to therapy, I was, going through my divorce, but I walked out of there. I'm like, I felt 25 pounds lighter. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. But, you have to have the courage to be able to, dig a little and say the thing that you're scared of. Because
Yeah.
when it's in the dark, I promise it is so much worse, and it causes so much disconnection and isolation, which is just the worst thing for a human to feel, you know?
Yeah. 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 I have so many people who just need to come and talk. I'm not a therapist specifically, but
Yeah,
I do like what I
right.
call compassionate conversations, because I
Yeah.
don't judge, and
No.
you can come and say whatever you need to say, all those things that you were never able to tell anyone, the deepest things in your heart and soul, and
Mhm.
it's just so important. But I find too that like people, I also find it difficult because people have trouble listening these days.
So
And
true.
so you may want to talk to someone, but they don't really know how to listen to you. They're thinking about themselves or they're thinking about what they're going to say.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not trying to like bring up all the problems, but I am trying to identify that we understand where it's challenging. You might try and talk to someone and you don't get what your heart and soul needed, but don't be discouraged and think, oh, I can't talk to anyone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And there is,
If only we could just like spray chemtrails of compassion.
oh, amen. Amen. I mean, the judgment, I'm so over the judgment and the
I
way
know.
that, everybody thinks, we're never defined by one thing about us or one thing that happened to us. It's
Yeah.
such a composite. Life is such a composite of every single thing. And it just, to isolate any one thing never does us any good. But I love
Mhm.
that I love what you do with, bringing up the energy, energy healing and the compassionate conversation, because they're so intertwined. They're so interrelated. And I
Yeah.
think people don't understand. It's really hard to understand the energy world. It's something that I always knew I felt, but I didn't know what to do with
Yeah.
it. And I wasn't
Yeah.
raised in a place where it was never talked about. It wasn't a thing. But the first time one of my yoga teachers encouraged me, she said, I think you'd really like this energy healer. She was just a couple miles from my house. And I went, and
Mhm.
I was trying everything when I was going through my divorce. I'm like, okay, I was looking for this healing path. Right. And as an athlete, what I felt in my body, I realized how I am so body centric, like just feeling the way I move and the way that my body feels and how connected that is to my mind and my heart. And that's what the
Mhm.
energy healing did for me, is it connected those things. And I think that, the world doesn't talk about it enough because I don't know, it shouldn't be taboo. It's such a part of who we are, but it
Yeah.
doesn't get talked about enough. Now I'm kind of flipping it on
Yeah.
you, but like, I love what you do. And I've been trained now. I went through, 2 years of, different energy healing modalities just to understand how that world works. And it's changed my
Mhm.
life. I mean, my home feels different.
Mhm.
My mind, my heart, everything has changed because of
That's
I
right.
understand how that energy affects our life. And
That's
yeah,
right.
so I love what you do.
Especially the energy of the mind. It's the
Yeah,
energy of the mind, right? Like when you go into someone's home, you can feel it because who they are and what's going on inside of them is what creates the vibe in the home.
yeah,
We think we have to live so much from our minds, but really the key to intelligence and wisdom comes from the heart.
yeah, yeah. And whether our heart is open. And so when my heart's very open, and then I learned also to put down, create those boundaries that help me, keep my home safe, keep
Yeah.
my heart and my mind safe. And it doesn't mean that you're closed off to other people, but you have to know where you end and other people begin. And I think that goes back to that
Yeah.
codependency thing. But when we really learn how to establish that, man, relationships just become such a beautiful thing, and then
Yeah.
we can figure out how to connect. And I think about what energy healing has done for my home, because I wanted my kids, after my divorce, I was like, I just really wanted to have a safe space for them. And I love the way my home feels now. It
Mm.
just, I had a friend of mine that had a sign company, and it says, she makes these beautiful wooden signs that's you can put anything you want on them. And I ordered one that said cultivate calm, because I realized
Mm.
that was where I perform and feel my best. And so
Mm.
it's not that you can just put up a sign and say, this is who we are, but it does, when you walk in the door, it's a little reminder of how I want my home to feel. And
Mhm.
it's been amazing since I hung that sign and I created this space, the people that have come through and the healing that has happened. And I often think, like, I'm going to write a book about this someday or make a movie about it, because so
Yeah.
many women have showed up through friendship, through life
Oh
circumstance.
yeah, you were telling me about this.
And it's so incredible. I just love, like, we manifest this stuff when we say, like, this is what
Yeah.
I want my home to feel like, this is what I want my business to be like. It's, it's really important the way we think of things, the way we, and, energy, the energy we put out there creates this stuff. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's just, I'm in awe of the things that we're capable of when we really can calm ourselves and set our course. So
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna quote that one day. I'm on some in your marketing.
Oh yeah.
I'm in awe. Like, yeah, being in awe of what we can create
Yeah.
when we get calm.
Yeah.
It's like opening up that space so that the spark of creation can actually fire,
Yeah.
you know? And then we're like more in flow, and like
Hmm.
the beauty of creation versus the push that, like the
Oh God, I'm such, grind culture just makes me go like this.
yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Like, we all know how to work hard. Like, when you come into this space and you're doing what
And
you're doing.
nobody likes that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people like it, but if you do, you're probably stuffing something down,
Yeah, exactly. I know to me, I
and
think
you're working hard to then be able to not have to work so hard.
right. Like, I don't want to show up just spent, or need to just fall over and sleep for 15 hours because I just, ground myself down to it, the smallest part of me. Like, that's burnout,
Yeah.
And I've been there. You just coming through trauma, realizing your own story, and then working your way
Yeah.
back to just being. And that's why my company, I call it, it's be better, not do better, because doing just makes us tired. Doing is just
That's
that
right.
continual list that will never be done. Right. I mean, soon as
Yeah.
you check and it's not that I'm not organized and I set my goals and I do all, I organize my day, but doing just to do, and getting wrapped up in our ego, and just thinking that, like, we have to just do all of these things to perform, and set, and we celebrate, celebrating type A culture. I call, I love,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is not me. That is what I've
Yeah.
realized. I just want to be, and when I am being myself, it happens, the right stuff happens.
Yeah.
And you have the energy then to do what you want to do, but
Yeah.
it's not just this constant, like, do better, do better, do better. It'll exhaust you, and you'll never feel good enough.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely won't. I want to talk more about your work and what you're doing, but I do want to say this reminded me of something you said earlier. I'm going to kind of combine the two, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but balance is really important. We need the structure, and we need, some people, you might call it a plan, but you need a structure,
Yeah.
the body, the building, the architectural design, so that when you bring in the energy, it has something to flow through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that.
And we are in the middle, like we have to be balanced, whether it's the emotions and the mind, or, the plan and the action and the spirit,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think balance is really important.
I agree. And I've heard people say, and I felt this myself, I can't remember where I heard it the first time, but discipline is freedom. And
Yeah.
like, and you think, people think, yeah, I know. And me too. I mean, I think helping my kids in school, I was like, oh, maybe I have ADHD too. I'm like, my mind is I have a creative mind, right? So it's bouncing from thing to thing all the time. And I have my friend Ashley that works with me now, and I call her the lander of my planes. I'm like, you got to help me land all these ideas, because it is.
I need it naturally.
Yeah. I mean, creative types, and I've watched my family in business, and I'm like, that creative always needs the math major, the science, the practical, like. But I've also known that I learned all these skills raising 4 kids and having to keep all the trains running on time. I'm like, okay, I know how to discipline a schedule, and I had to just take what I'd learned, in my family, and bring it to my own life. And, I look back to college. I mean, I got married at 22. So, like, my life is kind of flipped from, where a lot of people are. But I look back and I was like, no, I was organized. I was, high performing. I was playing sports, or, even when I wasn't playing volleyball anymore, I was always working out, and I had a very like a blocked schedule, but that balance of knowing how to organize and just know what we need to get done in a day. And then also having the ability to just do something spontaneous and know when, if you're doing those things that keep you, in alignment with your goals, you can have a day where you're just like, I'm not feeling it, or you know what, I just want to read this book, or my friend called, and you can pivot, right? And it depends on what career choice you take. Like, we're doing the entrepreneurial thing, so that does give you flex. I love that with my kids, but there are trade-offs. I mean, people that are working in the corporate world, they can be if they're fulfilled by their jobs, there's a lot of structure and safety in that, because somebody else is taking care of a lot of the things, and you get to work on what you're good at. And in the entrepreneurial world, you kind of have to wear all of your hats. And yes, it can show you what you're good at, and then what holes you need to fill, but all of that stuff, see, it all comes back to self-awareness, right? And just knowing what you're good at, and then trying to fill in and be balanced, and give yourself that time to take the downtime, so that you can actually look at what's on your plate and see what you have to do. Because if you get if you're burning the candle at both ends, you will. Where I got was hitting a point of like paralysis, where I was like, I have too much to do, I'm never going to get all this done. And I have had those moments in building what I'm building, because when your vision's really big, it can also get overwhelming, so I've had to figure out how to dial that back. And so much of it's come back to rest and recovery and energy work, and just keeping just staying clear, just trying to not let too much of the outside world and what other people think or what other people are doing influence my own vision. So it's a challenge, but it's fun.
Life is a challenge, and you've got a great vision. So tell us about Be Better Media.
So what I realized is, well, one, I'm a storyteller, and I didn't know, I'm not a TV watcher. I do enjoy movies with my kids, but I am not. So the whole media thing, the first time I put a camera in my face, like trying to make a video maybe 6 years ago, and I cried. So like the whole concept of, the whole concept of media really threw me. So I kind of went through the coaching route, and I love coaching people, and like I said, bringing out potential. But what I realized is storytelling is really my jam. And I really think that people are disarmed when they feel a part of something, when we relate a story to them in a way that's entertaining, inspiring, educational, and it's not just like the Hallmark Channel, which no shade on the Hallmark Channel, but like giving people stories that also give them tools of how to go through something, or how, something like how to advocate better for your health and wellness, or, how to talk to your mom about something. There's so many ways to do that. And then my podcast was the first, my blog was first, the Optimist Journal, which then grew into my podcast. And just taking these generational stories of like, okay, what have you been through? What have you learned from it? And how are you using those things to make the world better? So my podcast is called What I Meant to Say, because I realized I'd spent so many moments of my life growing up walking away from a situation and then saying, oh, I should have said that.
Yeah.
And I know everybody has that, right? I mean, it's relatable. And so I was like, that's it. You're just sitting on your couch and like, that's what I'm going to call it. And this is what I'm going to do. And so as you start to listen to other people's stories, they just keep flowing in. And I mean, I meet people like Sean and like you, and the stories are just they're flowing in. I've met the right people who have experience in Hollywood, worked there for 30 years. And then, COVID put their business off on a different path, or, was really shutting them down. And then the streaming world has changed so much. And I'm realizing like, there's just so many ways we can tell these stories. And so my goal is to create stories of generational change, things that inspire and influence in a way that we're not getting one, I don't think we're not getting it in the mainstream news media. That is not the world I live in. And I know there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but I think we focus on it too much. I think there's a lot of things we can't control. So what are the things we can? And how can we tell those stories to empower everybody out there that's walking around that isn't part of this elite class? I don't care which, the power and the money and the overarching power structure. I don't care what political party you're talking about. They're not touching the mind, body, and spirit of your average citizen in any country,
No.
And so it's a bold goal, but I'm just looking at it because when I walk down the street and when I talk to people like you or the guy at the hardware store, I'm like, there's just good people out there with good stories. They're going through stuff. And the sad thing about America today is that you do have to attract the big names, right? You got to but I'm always amazed by the regular people that are just doing the good work. So, if I just believe you attract something that's going to keep leveling up your story if you show up and do the work every day. And so that's what I'm doing, and my weeks are flying past. And it's so fun to do conversations like this. And that's what Be Better Media is all about. And we'll definitely run this back on my show, and we can do this some more. So you can.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Because
you can put me in the hot seat.
This is the kind of stuff that needs to grow. Everybody needs to heal. Everybody. And that's not shade. That's not a bad thing. That's just the human experience. And it allows us to level up and be high performers. So,
one of my teachers just wrote a book, and the title is "You Are Not Perfect the Way You Are."
I love that. That is so
and it's
good.
so true. He's like, get over it. You are not perfect. You are not okay. So these are the things.
Oh my gosh,
what you need to know.
Genius. That's genius. And it's so true. And it's like,
there's genius.
That is so genius. And there's such a conversation around self-worth, and that is so important to know that you're worth it, but you're worth the work. It's not just, I'm worth it sitting here on my couch. It's like, you're worth the work. And then you do the work, and then that connects to somebody else, and it just creates the power of what that can create. Just inspires me every day. So
last thing I'll say, because that was just too good. Self-worth and self-love. It's so big, but I feel like people are always, again, your worth comes from the essence of your being. Like, you are worth knowing that you are way more than that personality. You're worth knowing that you're way more than your achievements. All of it comes from the truth of your being. And when you love that aspect, then that love flows out into your personality, and it flows out into your being and your life and your actions. So you can love your personality and all these, like the way you look, all these surface things, but really self-love is about like yourself, your true self. And that's how you change your life.
And when we can connect to that, because there's such a conversation, and I talk to a lot of, whether it's athletes or veterans or people that have been through that have risen to high levels and been through a lot of stuff, but so much of their identity is tied up in that one thing. Like, I am an athlete. I am a soldier. What do I do? What's my next mission when that thing is over? And the answer is really, when you can connect back to your true self, you see that that's only one part of who you are. And I think that in itself can solve or can really create so much healing in the mental health space, because that identity and really knowing that we're so much more than that one thing is so important.
Erasing the programming and the brainwashing.
We're pretty amazing, diverse creatures.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, we're nearing the end. I'm going to give you a moment to share something with our listeners that you think is important, that they need to know. It's totally up to you what you want to say. No pressure or anything like that. And Yeah, go for it. I mean, I like the generational healing aspect. I don't know if there's something that we missed
No,
in
I
that
think
realm.
that, like I said, that's my North Star. And the quote that's come into my mind, and it's somebody that I encourage people to go out and look up some of the work that he's done. He was on Finding Mastery. His name's Chip Conley. He was an entrepreneur, and one of his quotes is, "Wisdom is pattern recognition." And
Oh, interesting.
it's a quote that, it's a very practical quote to me, but it's something that I realized, because like you said at one point in this interview, like, the patterns emerge, the themes emerge. If you can pay attention to those patterns and themes that come through in your life and learn to recognize them, we really do ourselves a lot of favors by recognizing
Yeah.
those things and seeing like how we form relationships, or things that we could change, and not being afraid to recognize the pattern and go, oh, maybe that's a helpful pattern, and this one is not a helpful pattern, and how would I want to change that? And so that's the generational healing to me, is recognizing those patterns and not being ashamed of them, not thinking that you're calling someone out, and doing it in kindness and in gratitude for all the good things that have come through. But when there's something that feels like it's caused you harm, or it's created something in you that doesn't feel right, like, it's okay. Like, be courageous enough to face those things, and then you can change the pattern for you and for the next generation. And I think that, man, that would do a lot of good things in the world if we could get people to really look honestly at this stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you can reweave your patterns in
yeah,
the fabric of your life. Because
yeah,
that's really what it is. We're living a web. In our own lives, we create a web of relationships, a web of our experiences, and it's all a pattern, whether you see it or not. So maybe get calm, relax your nervous system, open your eyes so that you can see the pattern that you're weaving in the fabric of your life, and create a new pattern if you want to.
yeah,
There's so many articles of clothing you can have in your closet.
yeah.
So just
And
always be ready to create a new pattern.
yeah, and yours isn't going to look like anybody else's, so don't compare.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 48 and I'm starting chapter 2 and doing something different, whereas most people are like, oh, you defined your career in your 30s. I'm like, well, I didn't, but I raised 4
Yeah.
amazing kids, and everything I did there, I'm carrying out into this new venture. And so it's like, don't compare yourself, just go after what you want to
Just
go
live.
after and live. Yeah, exactly. So
That's right. I had a friend once say, this is years ago, I was like, I don't know, I was down about where I was in life or something. I was living in New York, and, I think I was like still modeling and maybe just getting into energy work and my own awareness. And she was like, this is your story. Everyone has a story. And it's these moments, all the things that lead up to when people know your name, to when you're in their face. That's a story that you then tell. So if
yeah,
you skip your story, then you skip the becoming.
yeah,
So, and like you're saying, everyone's story is different, but story matters. So
that,
just live your story, let your life be your life, and it's just great if you can do it.
yeah. I mean, it's a challenge to just let it flow. It is. It's a
It
challenge,
is, yeah.
but it's amazing. And when you feel it, when you're in your space, where you are, when
You
you
know,
are where you're supposed to be.
I know we keep saying we're going to end, but it's the societal thing,
Yeah,
because if society wasn't telling you that you need if you need things, if you need this metric, if you need to be this by this age, it would be fine.
mm-hmm.
Yes, we have biological clocks, and we, have a lifespan and all these things, and, certain mental acuity at certain ages and all these things, which, we can deal with if we
Yeah,
have the proper tools. But in reality, it's the societal pressure that makes us think we're not good enough, or that makes us think we're off time. And granted, we live in society and we need the things that, because we are physical and we have to live here. But that's really what it is, that's what's creating the judgment in someone else's mind about you and what you're doing, because they're also basing it on some societal construct. That's just a construct,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. It can look different for each one of
And
us. Just gotta let us be, right? Just let us
let
be.
go, let it go. Yes.
Exactly. It is so freeing.
Uh,
I love it. I know. I love these conversations. I told you to wake up on a Sunday morning and go, gosh, I get to dig in like first thing in the
I
morning.
know.
When I'm a morning person, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Oh, are you?
this is so my jam. Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I love the morning. So.
Well, it's a good thing you're in California and I'm in Central Time Zone.
Well, honor your clock, but yeah, my kids teach.
Yeah.
My girl in Texas, she can call me when she wakes up and she knows I'm already awake. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. I forgot to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can find Wendy at
Be Better Media.tv, and my podcast streaming everywhere is called What I Meant to Say. So if you would subscribe, that would help me a lot, and we can further these kind of conversations. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
That's right. Yeah, I'm so glad you were here. Wendy's having really great conversations on her podcast as well, so definitely check that out. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait, no.